I'm going to be replacing the shocks on a '68 Bronco. We're going to replace these old worn out shocks with new KYB gas adjusts. This is the old worn out shock, and this, you can see, I can compress by hand very easily, and when I compress it, it doesn't expand. This one is completely shot. Here's the new shock by KYB. You can see how hard it is to compress it. Putting most of my weight on this and I can just barely compress it. See how the new shock expands. Quite unlike the old shock, which is still fully compressed. The new shock comes with rubber bushings and washers. You can see the old shock has those. We want to use all the new hardware that came with the new shock. You can see the order that it went on. Metal washer cupped upward, rubber bushing. Now the next rubber bushing is going to go on here, but this is where it mounts to the vehicle. So it will be mounted to the vehicle. Next rubber bushing, next washer, and then the nut will go on the very top and we'll tighten it there on the vehicle. I'm removing the old shock right here. It's really easy. There's only two mounting points, one at the bottom, one at the top. I sprayed a little penetrating oil on this to try to get it broken loose, and it is really tough. So I'm going to put my breaker bar on it and break this thing loose. New one goes in place. I'm applying thread locking compound. Using a screwdriver to pry this thing up. Put that bolt through. Thread locking compound. I'm going to tighten this nut to 25 foot-pounds, but I don't want the body of the shock to turn while I do that. So I'm going to put a wrench on this fitting right here. That'll keep the shock in place, and I can turn this. The last piece is this locking nut. I've put some thread locking compound on that. Okay, I'm holding the bottom one in place. Tighten the top one. Just going to snug that up. Now we're locked in place. The lower one needs to be torqued to 50 foot-pounds. I'm bracing it from the back with a socket. Tighten it to 50.
Take the back shock off by removing this top bolt. And there's one bolt on the bottom part of the shock. I'm having to use a breaker bar on this one because it's stuck, but it's coming off quite nicely.
For the top one on the Bronco, you can see that there's a mounting stud right there. So it's just going to go over the top of that, and it's going to fit on quite nicely. I don't need to use any of the hardware that came with it because it just fits perfectly on here. I'm going to install the hardware here. This cap will go on over it right there. With that hardware in place, I'm going to put the lower on first because doing the lower last, the shock is super hard to compress by hand, and I can get this one on the top a lot easier. So I'm going to put the bolt through it. I'm going to cut the strap and try to get that on there as it expands. Thread lock. Specifications are 25 for the top, 50 for the lower. Okay, the shocks are on. Everything's running great. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe.